Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm John Lazarus with Stories Matter and D&E Publishing. Let me share a story. The heat went out in our office one winter a few years back. And while I tried to get my employees to work through it and use the heat from their computer screens to compensate, it became clear we needed to fix the heat. Now, as a man with a lot of pride, I wanted to take care of it myself. I strapped on the work boots I never wear and went to Home Depot to buy supplies. I came back with a new thermostat, only to realize all the thermostat does is let you adjust the heat. The heat doesn't actually come from the little box on the wall. It was a larger issue with the furnace in our building. 2 weeks later, after we burned most of our backlog for warmth, I caved and hired an expert. I mention this very relatable anecdote to show you that we don't always require the skills for the jobs we need done. Editing is crucial to the success of any piece of fiction, whether it's a young adult fantasy, a neo-noir thriller, or interracial gay bondage courtroom erotica. Editing is what gets rid of unnecessary characters, uncharacteristic dialogue, and unconcise prose. Editing is what gets you to, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, when you start out with, it was a rather mediocre period of time that couldn't be solely characterized as being either good or bad. But editing, like fixing the heat in your office, isn't something a writer can do on their own. While editors are mostly failures who are only editing because they couldn't make it as a writer, they are still essential to your success, so it's probably best not to tell them what I just said. In this video, I'll first explain why you can't be your own editor, and then give you some tips on how to best work with your editor. We'll condense our thoughts, work toward being concise, write succinctly, and never be redundant on this edition of Stories Matter. Today's video is brought to you by Grammarly. Are you tired of sending emails to coworkers that are accidentally filled with slurs and expletives? Or perhaps you're tired of autocorrect changing what you meant to be slurs in your emails into more acceptable language. Perhaps you need Grammarly. Grammarly is an AI writing assistant software tool that can help you edit, proofread, and shape your writing for whatever your needs. Whether you're writing a press release, editing a fantasy novel, or texting a friend some plans about bombing Houthis in Yemen. Visit Grammarly for more information. Reason 1. You're too close to this thing. Us writers know that our writing is our children. In fact, they're more than that. A book won't write itself, but the 7 children of mine that I'm aware of seem to have raised themselves pretty well on their own. And that love is important. It's that love you'll need to sell this thing to an agent and convince a publisher to take a chance on it, and to get in shouting matches with people at book readings to prove their interpretation is wrong. But we are blind to the things that we love. Just like I was blind to the fact that my first wife was a serial bigamist, a writer might be blind to the fact that the horrible misogyny in their first sentence, even if well-intentioned, might be off-putting for certain readers. You already know your whole story. It's probably perfectly clear in your mind, but a new reader doesn't have that knowledge. Editors offer a unique perspective. The only way to get around this is to write in a drug-fueled stupor like I talked about in this video, so that you completely forget what you write. But that kind of writing is still going to need an editor anyway, and you'll probably impregnate or get impregnated by someone you don't even know. Reason 2. Your brain plays tricks on you. Beyond emotional connections, we tend to gloss over things like typos and grammar mistakes. Our brains are wired to fill in the blanks, especially with things we're familiar with. For example, a few years ago, it took me a month to discover a neighbor had killed himself in his car in my parking garage. My brain was just on autopilot during my morning and afternoon commute. I was blind to what was around me. It works the same after your 50th read-through of your novel. Reason 3. You're too confident and/or you're too insecure. As a writer, you probably swing back and forth between these two thoughts. Everyone who's not a brilliant creator like me is just a thoughtless animal, content to eat, shit, and die. And I fucking hate writing. I swear I should just quit and finish law school. And sometimes I might even have these two thoughts within the same hour. It's why writing really should be considered some kind of mental illness. Anyway, these thought processes either force us to under or over edit. In the case of the former, I waited until page 47 to introduce the main protagonist. And in the case of the latter, my family drama set during the Russian Revolution was cut to a lean 80 pages. Now, let's see how we can solve these issues by working with an editor. Tip 1. Remember, your editor is not your enemy. My editor's name is Thelma Shelby, and she's shaped and polished the majority of John Lazarus's works for the past 23 years. It's a relationship that's lasted twice as long as any of my other working relationships, and more than 10 times as long as any of my marriages. Why did I choose Thelma? Well, first, being a woman, I thought she'd see things I would naturally miss. And boy, was I right. For example, before I met Thelma, I had no idea women menstruated for 5 to 7 days a month. I always thought it was something closer to 15. But more importantly, she's an 87-year-old woman confined to a wheelchair. This means she's got loads of wisdom and experience. She's got really nothing else to do with her time. And I'll never act too aggressively toward her because she's such a sweet and kind person, even if she's not always sweet and kind to my beautiful words. At the very least, I wouldn't punch her in the mouth for trying to change my table of contents like the editor I worked with before her. Tip 2. Choose your battles. You'll be amazed with all the feedback an editor will give you. But unlike a session with a dominatrix, you don't have to listen to everything they say. For example, when I wrote Cher, I was unwilling to budge on the title. At the same time, I took Thelma's advice and got rid of the subplot about Frederick trying to fake Native American heritage to get money for college. Thelma also convinced me to set the final gun battle at his house instead of a chocolate factory, but I was unwilling to try and add more comedy to the scene. Anyway, these are typical conversations you will have with your editor. Tip 3. Sometimes your editor is your enemy. I'm not talking about Thelma, but pretty much every other editor I've ever worked with. Sometimes people just don't click. They might say things like, "I can't believe you're actually a writer," or "How have you not gone bankrupt?" That just rub you the wrong way. And they might not be completely comfortable about being followed to their home. Some people have different styles and personalities. So don't hesitate to fire an editor that you don't work well with. They'll find work soon enough from the hundreds of thousands of other desperate writers out there. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Next time on Stories Matter. And so that's why I was kicked out of the Somali immigrant writers group. So it turned out I was FaceTiming with my wife the entire time the prostitute was in the room with me. Damn it, Chief, can't you see you're too close to this thing?